Hello, everyone. I think it's about time to start. It's a very important. Can you hear me now? Hello. My name is Pornpern Khongkachonkiet. I'm from the Cross Cultural Foundation. I'm now on behalf of Transitional Justice Asia and also the Asian Justice and Rights. We co-organize this event with the May 18 Foundation to commemorate, I would say, civil disobedience movement in Asia. And thank you for May 18 that have believed in us and want us to also to spread the initiative, so-called transitional justice. We have only 1 hour and we have very high profile, I would say, in Southeast Asia regarding to our initiative on truth, justice, persecution, reparation, and also reform. This is a key 4 pillars in our initiative on promoting of transitional justice. However, in Burma, Philippines, and Indonesia, and in the context of Aceh, we have a lot of progress, but also lesson learned. Of course, there are some challenges and growing of authoritarians in our regions. However, people are still have a very strong attempt to stand up for democracy. You can see what happened in Myanmar in the recent months. And also there are key issues regarding to the failure of accountability mechanism, human rights mechanism, and also justice mechanism, including the ongoing and forever instability of our government. Some could go extend like the dictator, like military dictatorship, or elected government, but carry on that our region still are lacking of rule of law, circle of violence. And so we're gonna hear from our friends from Philippines, Indonesia, and Myanmar in order to see how we have achieved on truth and justice. We have 4 panelists today. The first one, Hanji from ND Burma. He's going to update us about Myanmar and challenges of democratization at the moment. The issue in Myanmar is also foresee that we might have to do a lot more on transitional justice. The second speaker is Cecilia Jimenez, who is a human rights lawyer, and also she is a former member of TJRC, the Transitional Justice Reconciliation Commission of the Philippines. She's talking about her experience in the past 5 years of the implementation of the peace process in context of Mindanao, and also maybe she would keep us an update also at the national levels. And then we will hear from Afridal, Darmi, who is also a human rights lawyer. Since 2003, he started working as human rights activist, and later he has also become a director of the board of NGO in Aceh. And he's also going to give us challenges that faced by the Acehese TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and maybe some recommendation or lesson learned to us, to all of us here in the context of justice and peace. And Galuh Wandita, she's going to give us a regional view on effectiveness of the regional mechanism. She has extended experience since 1996, and also she has her good hands in development of peace and justice in Timor-Leste. So I think to start with, maybe Hanji, are you ready? So Hanji can update us about the concern and the most worried situation in Myanmar right now. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pinoy. So good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to address the 2021 Gwangju Democracy Forum, session of Challenge for Transitional Justice and Democracy in Asia. My name is Hanji. I am the coordinator of the Network for Human Rights Documentation Burma and Burma. As you all aware, within 3 months, things are happening a lot in Myanmar. So I will summarize the situation of challenge facing the pro-democracy movements across Myanmar, including for ethnic minorities and the challenge facing transitional justice and democracy. Sorry, I cannot prepare the PowerPoint due to I'm quite busy right now. The actions of the Myanmar Tamda in the early morning hours of February 2021 resulted in the unlawful detainment and arrest of political leaders and activists through a coordinated coup d'etat. This illegitimate attempt to maintain power comes as the military felt threatened by the civilian governments who had made an attempt to reduce their control through change to the 2008 constitution. The military has taken over. Full control of the state power have been handed to Commander-in-Chief Myanmar. Since seizing power, the military has renamed themselves like a State Administration Council, SAC. The people have refused to accept the legitimacy of the government and have participated in nationwide protests in numbers scaling hundreds of thousands. Protesters have come from all different backgrounds, including medics, engineers, lawyers, journalists, human rights defenders, civil society organizations, and more. Even though the military has harshly cracked down, the spirit of organizers has remained high. While they bravely protest in the streets, advocates have called for action and international attention to the crimes against humanity. Right now, 160 means more than 3 months have passed since the coup. In that time, 790 have been killed, including 47 women and 51 children. 5,073 have been arrested since coup. 3,989 are being detained and sentenced. 1,659 are evading arrest. Late night arrests by the junta have led to many more senior level officials being arrested and detained. The location and condition of several remain unknown. The military has returned the bodies of others to their families, some barely recognizable and displaying clear evidence of torture. The military has also cut off internet access in the evenings for more than 3 months. During this time, they are prone to arrest dissidents and other prominent figures who threaten their autonomy. Gender violence against women human rights defenders. Women human rights defenders have been specifically targeted and brutally harassed and abused for their anti-coup activities. The Tamda abducted several youths on 17 April, and then the following day released images of them before and after they were violently abused in detention. One of the detainees, a woman aged 31, named Makinyedu, was subjected to sexual violence by security forces while in detention. The attacks on women human rights defenders have been increasing and only contributing to the fear being invoked upon civilians. Overall, the situation in Myanmar remains dire. Medical workers have called urban areas battlefields as they work to quickly respond to the injury. Nighttime raids of homes and properties continue with high ransom being demanded in exchange for property, motorcycles and cell phones being returned. The agenda is fabricating evidence to justify their mass detainment of protesters, including photographing arrestees with weapons that they allegedly confiscate, when in reality, they were added to the photos by soldiers in attempt to distort reality. The civil disobedience movement was started by doctors who encouraged civilians to reject the military coup by not attending work. The work of CDM activists has also included organizing protests. The courage of the government employees, including police and military personnel who drive the CDM, speaks volumes to the level of deep mistrust is for the Tamil. Despite the brutal crackdown, they courageously persist in their effort. The doctors and medical staff initiating the CDM are risking their own lives to save many at the front lines, and their sacrifice will never be forgotten. As pressure remains on students and teachers to return to school, educators are refusing to do so under the leadership of the State Administrative Council. Teachers are determined to not work under a military education system. They face many risks and threats, as do their families, for refusing to cooperate with the military agenda. At least 47 teachers are also among the detainees. Arrest warrants have been issued for 150 teachers on charge of incitements. More than 80% of teachers support the CDM. Over 90% of students have boycotted university sets to reopen. Censorship and silencing of the press. The agenda is continuing to show its disdain for the free press by working to eliminate all channels of free and fair reporting. Reporters Without Borders call on the international community to respond to the threats and intimidation being faced by the press, as a growing number of medias issue warrants for their arrest. During these crackdowns, the military has continued to attack journalists. At least 80 journalists have been arrested, of whom 48 remain in detention. 20 are evading arrest. Between borders, ethnic conflict remains rampant along various borders. Much of the attacks by the Tamil appear to be in response to ethnic armed organizations who have been vocal in their condemnation of the coup and refusal to work with the military regime. Armed groups have been sending a strong message that they have no interest in peace talks with the dictatorship. They are offering protection and support to protesters, and others are working with the National Unity Government, which is an exiled government. More than 41 airstrikes on civilians in 6 days have taken place since the ASEAN Summit meeting in Jakarta in 24th April. In recent airstriking ethnic carrying areas along the Thai-Burma border, there are around 40,000 IDPs hiding in the jungles or along the Salon River. Those displaced are in urgent need of humanitarian support. Among the displaced are elderly, some are 100 years old, children, pregnant women, and newborns whose mother gave birth whilst in hiding. Let me conclude by saying that there are many obstacles for transitional justice and democratization in Myanmar. The military state enjoys institutionalized impunity. Even they are committing more atrocity through state-sponsored crackdowns on protesters and targeting civilians in ethnic areas with airstrikes and indiscriminate shelling against EU control areas. It is civilians who suffer the most during these attacks, as they rarely see justice for loved ones who are killed in the crossfire. Journalists, human rights defender, and human rights documentation group cannot freely access conflict areas or coup protest area to document the brutal crackdown on unarmed protesters. The military and gender police forces are continuing to arrest, detain, and sentence innocent protesters. Democratically elected members of parliament, including President Win, State Councillor Daw San Suu Kyi, and other prominent leaders have been arrested and charged by oppressive laws. They have not had a fair trial and largely been denied legal counsel. Some MPs who were taken away by the gender died during their interrogations. People are suffering from human rights violation. Impact of it allow the over 70-year civil war. Even victims and their families cannot find truth, justice, and reparation for those endure a long period of violations. Since the coup, the political and human rights situation has changed, but the military tactics remain the same. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hanji, and very informative and also emotional for us, no, as a member of ASEAN, and also I'm from Thailand, so we have heard also a lot of situation in regarding to the IDP and the humanitarian assistance was either intentionally blocked by Thai military along Thai-Myanmar border, and I'm really think that the Myanmar situation is a very good lesson learned for all of us, that if the root cause is not addressed or is not done to solve the problem, the violence, circle of violence has erupted again, and even harder for all of us, including the people in Myanmar, to respond, and it's very high casualties right now. All the best, Hanji, and we are with you. And I also heard that today at the Miss Universe competition in the US, the Burmese representative in the beauty contest have also won the dress, national dress award, no? And she's holding the sign called Save Myanmar, and the same thing also happened in Thailand a few months ago at the beauty contest. So everyone is looking up to the progress, democratization in Myanmar. The next speaker is Cecilia. Cecilia is preparing also very informative PowerPoint, and we will learn from Cecilia's how, if we are come into the step after the conflict, we get something like Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Committee. What is the best we can do, and what are the consequences of that 5 years, process in Philippines? I think the context is in Mindanao conflict, but you can also giving us some lesson learned from the Philippines. Thank you. Is PowerPoint ready? Yes,
Thank
please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for this privilege of speaking to all of you. I will use the PowerPoint so that we can have a clearer idea of what's going on. So it's just an aid, but I would like to give, before I start on the Bangsamoro, I would like to give my appreciation and commendation for the efforts in Myanmar by the people themselves in fighting for democracy. I think this is very important, and even we are not merely observing, but yes, definitely one with you in solidarity. So I have been asked to give an update, the background and an update on transitional justice in the Bangsamoro. And from the very beginning, I would like to say that this is the view from a person who used to work as a member of the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission for the Bangsamoro. I'll give you a very brief background on that, then walk you through as to what happened and where we are. So We can start now. So as Pornpern said, I think it's important that whatever transitional justice issues that we talk about, we actually situate it not only with the locality, but with regard to the holistic context with which we find ourselves in. And in the Philippines, it's always been a series and values, unfortunate values of neglect, oppression, and authoritarian rule and human rights violations. Without looking into these issues, transitional justice will merely be a technical issue. And we in the transitional justice movement in the Philippines do not look at transitional justice as merely technical, but it's definitely political and community-based transitional justice. And we believe that this is how it can really be genuine to the people. And now the Philippines, of course, as a whole country, we're said to have transitioned from dictatorship to democracy, etc. And Mindanao was actually one of the highest, worst hit in the Philippines during the dictatorship. Unfortunately, the path to democracy is strewn with problems and obstacles. And there's always a tendency for authoritarian rule backed by human rights violations. So I would like to stress that context in order to insist that when we're talking about transitional justice, we should not forget the political background in which we find ourselves. So next slide, please. So let's go to Mindanao, which is where I live actually. Philippines is a big country, not as big as Indonesia, of course, but big enough. And I live in the southern most island in the Philippines, which is where the Bangsamoro comes from. Actually live in communities, and this is also where we should not forget where indigenous peoples, a lot of them, we call them Lumads, and we insist on calling them Lumads because this is how they identify themselves. And this is very important for us to understand, but there are also Christian settlers. And as I said, martial law, authoritarian rule is not only in the past, it is still in the present. And this is what we try to really fight against. And we have other issues like displacement and non-state armed groups. And so when we're talking about transitional justice for the Bangsamoro, we are also talking about a national process for transitional justice and reconciliation. Not just the Bangsamoro, even though there are different actors, different parts of the Philippines, different historical periods, so to speak, because the transitional justice applicable towards martial law does not cover the whole legitimate grievance of the Bangsamoro, for example, particularly when we are talking about the right to self-determination. Next slide, please. So what's the background? I'll just take one minute to this. You may or may not know that we have undergone one of the most comprehensive peace processes in the whole of the world. And that peace agreement between the government of the Philippines, of the Republic of the Philippines, and the MILF, it's one of the groups that have been fighting for secession for the Bangsamoro, they came to a peace agreement. And part and parcel of that comprehensive agreement for the Bangsamoro is normalization. This normalization set up the Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Commission, of which I was a part. And we were tasked to study these 4 issues. This was given to us. So very clearly, what we were supposed to work on were legitimate grievances of the Bangsamoro people, to correct historical injustices. And remember that in those first 2, it's very important to see that it's not just martial law, it's not just a dictatorship, but a lot of the grievances and historical injustice even went all the way back to the Spanish time period, colonization period. and the American period. And then, of course, we looked at addressing human rights violations, including marginalization through land dispossession. And I think you will agree with me that land dispossession in many countries, and it's not just the Philippines, it's not just the Bangsamoro, has been one of the trickiest issues. Without its resolution, you cannot really have a lot of resolution into this or normalization for the people themselves. So these are the four issues. So let's go to the next slide. And so what did we do? We conducted a listening process, which lasted for almost over a year. These are just some photographs. Next slide. And that listening process actually was conducted in many parts of Mindanao. This is the map of Mindanao. And so we covered not just the Bangsamoro, but also other parts of Mindanao. And we consulted what we wanted to talk about, the three types of people in Mindanao. The Bangsamoro, of course, the indigenous peoples, and last but not the least, the settlers, most of whom are Christians. Next slide. And this is just a photograph of our facilitators and experts. Next, please. And what were our outputs? From 2016 to 2017, we came out with the main report. The main report is a TJRC principal report. It's on the website. You are of the TJRC, tjrc.ph. You're invited to consult it for any lessons learned, so to speak. But we also produced two other reports, and that is a land report, which is very important. And connected with the land report was a commissioned report from the World Bank and the IOM about land, territory, domain, and identity, which they submitted to the commission. And really this goes to show to you how important the land issue is, because the problems of land dispossession in Mindanao reverberates until now. And last but not the least is about the process that we undertook. So these were the four reports that were the main outputs of the TJRC. Next slide. So just a photograph of when we presented the main report to the Malaysian facilitator of the peace process, because this was part and parcel of the peace process. So I think it's also important to note that the TJRC and its output was really very much part one, a part of what we would call the track one of the peace process. And so one of the challenges that we find right now is to ensure that the results of those, the recommendations, the analysis that we have in those reports actually go down to track 2 and track 3 so that it's really at the community level. Next slide. So in the supplementary reports, here you will find the MILF, also part and parcel of receiving the reports. Next slide, please. So what were the TJRC report findings? These were just some of the words. We ran through a word. And you can really see that as far as the people themselves are concerned, the people, we're not talking about government here, people. They are really suffering from exclusion, sidelining, political, non-recognition, discrimination, etc. Next slide. And our analysis. The consequences that the situation we find ourselves right now are really the consequences of three mutually reinforcing phenomena: violence, which is horizontal and vertical, of course. Second is impunity, where there is no accountability. And last but not the least, neglect, where Mindanao, the Bangsamoro, have not really been seen to be part and parcel of the political committee, the political body of the Republic of the Philippines. Next slide. So, and what is the root cause? And this, I really would like to insist upon this. I am not a Bangsamoro. I'm actually one of the settlers in Mindanao. And I think it's really important that even us, the whole country, really acknowledge that one of the main root cause for the problem, if you want, the situation in the Bangsamoro is because history has shown us, the state particularly, has imposed a monolithic Filipino identity and the Philippine state by force, when the Bangsamoro existed for many, many generations and centuries before. And this is why, at the end of the day, we still need to look at transitional justice for the Bangsamoro as an element of the right to self-determination. Next slide. So we had two sets of recommendations, and the first set was institutional. And this is to set up a National Transitional Justice and Reconciliation Committee on the Bangsamoro. And in order that we can address, the state can address violence, impunity, and neglect. And this is at the state level. And we also made suggestions that the main focus would be truth and historical memory, land dispossession, of course, third, impunity, and last but not the least, healing and reconciliation. Now, just before we go to the next slide, as to the second set of recommendations, I would like to say that we came out with this report in 2016, and in around 2017 or 2018, there was a bill, a legislative bill in the Philippine Congress to set this up at the national level. But unfortunately, nothing. It's not a priority bill of this government, and it's gone through some technical discussions, but there is no political will to go through and have it adopted, unfortunately. So we really still have to do a lot of work on this, because we believe that, okay, this is an institution, but that institution should and would represent the acknowledgement and the accountability approaches of the Republic of the Philippines. That is our wish. So that's the first set of recommendations. And the second set is about, next slide, is going through specific recommendations addressed mainly to the state. And this, next slide, please. The second set of recommendations are actually divided into the four pillars: the right to truth, right to justice, right to reparations, guarantees of non-recurrence. It addresses the different levels as well, and it's very important to see an all of government, state, but also all of society approach. Next slide. Next slide. And where are we right now? Since this was given in 2016, our recommendations, it's only about a month ago that the government decided that we will adopt a roadmap. So we have not really been in any position yet, I have to tell you, to go through the roadmap in detail. We have a much more detailed roadmap, but here you will see that it's divided into two tracks, track 1 and track 2, which is very important, and it covers the right to truth. It covers the which also includes memorialization, and as well as the aspect of impunity. So this is the roadmap of the government. So next slide. This is my last slide. And you will see that the challenges will continue. It's quite new, this government roadmap. It's done by the government, but I think the burning questions are, where is the interconnectedness? Does not seem to be a whole of government state approach. Where is the interdependency of the four pillars of transitional justice? Where are the voices of the victims and the communities? And of course, state accountability. And all the while, we still have pending issues, Marawi, the militant groups, and of course, the ongoing horizontal violence. The work is still cut out for us, like everybody else, and so, we will go on to make sure that we're on the right track. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, and thank you for a very comprehensive, long process, but you did it in just a bit more than 10 minutes. It's professional. Okay, so the lesson learned from Philippines is very interesting, that it has come to a very top priority at once. So it's become a national agenda now, that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has set up, the peace agreement has signed, but the thing is about implementation. And I think a lot of us has putting effort, no, to including, I have also once listened to the women group in Bangsamoro, and also the participation of the people are much greater than other example in Southeast Asia, I would say. So that is a very good lesson learned, and to be continued, as Cecilia said. Okay, the next session is Aceh. We are coming to somehow that initiative of Truth and Reconciliation has also started, no, with some circumstances that we have learned in the past after tsunami, and also the platform that has been created. So Afridal, Darmi, are you ready? So you are going to bring us through the challenges of the TRC, Aceh TRC. And then some of the recommendations from a very practical view that you have been involved. Are you ready? I haven't seen you.
Yes, thank you, Noi.
Okay.
Good day, everybody, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share our experience, and on the other hand, also learn from our colleagues around the region. So it is argued that since the fall of Suharto, Indonesia also come into a transition from authoritarian into a democratic country. But on the other hand, for Aceh, it is not so. Even during this time of 5 years since 1998 that marked the fall down of Suharto, the authoritarian regime, until 2003, the human rights abuses that happen in Aceh even become worse. Even in 2003, just a year before the tsunami 2004, the central government in Jakarta put Aceh into the martial law. So arguing that at the time is a transitional condition in Indonesia that is changing from authoritarian into a democratic is not yet fully happened at the time. However, after the tsunami, both parties, which is the Free Aceh movement, the rebellious group, and the Indonesian government, come into accord, the peace accord. So I'd like to put a little bit background, because this is very important in the oncoming stories about the Aceh Truth and Reconciliation. One of the articles of the peace accord between the Free Aceh movement and the government of Indonesia is the Article 3, which is has the title Human Rights. So in the human article, there's a 3 sub-article. First of all, that both parties agree that the Indonesian government will ratify 2 main covenant of Indonesia: International Human Rights, which is the Civil and Political Rights Covenant, and Economic, Social, and Cultural Covenant. This, the Indonesian government, without any delay, do it in the next year. So just 1 year after the MOU, the government ratified. The problem is the next 2 sub-articles. The next article saying that Indonesian government will establish human rights court for Aceh human rights abuses. And the last one is for the past abuse of human rights, which is prior to 2005 when the accord is signed, is saying that the Indonesian will establish the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We get the stories from both parties that at the time when the accord is signing, the Indonesian government is freely and willingly agree to this term, because at that time in Jakarta as well, there is a National Commission on Human Rights. However, just 6 months after the signing of the MOU, the Constitutional Court established a verdict saying that the law on National Truth and Reconciliation Commission has some stipulation or verses that is against the Constitution and human rights. So the Mahkamah Konstitusi then they established the law. So it puts the MOU in Aceh is in limbo because of the national law already revoked, that puts the TRC in Aceh cannot establish as well, because it's put in the same regime of law, right? And then the civil society organizations, okay, let me return back for a while. As the implementation of the MOU, there is power sharing between the central government and the Aceh people. The Aceh province is given autonomous law, autonomous rights. So it is create the law number 11/2006, which is named the LOGA, Law on the Governing of Aceh. This is the window of opportunity, because in the Article 2039, it said that under this law, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Aceh is established. So there is a two law about TRC. First of all, the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is revoked by the Mahkamah Konstitusi. And the second one is the law on the governing of Aceh, the law of the autonomous right. One of the article gives the opportunity for Aceh to establish their own TRC. So that is the base of our TRC happened and established in Aceh. Now, this make in one hand, Aceh has the opportunity to establish their own law, but in the other hand, this will show at the end of my speaking that precisely similar to what Cecilia already mentioned in the last slide of hers. My word is here is inclusiveness. How they interconnected between what happened in Aceh to what happened in Jakarta. Because the government in Jakarta is clearly saying that TRC in Aceh is based on autonomous law, and everything that related to their work is responsibility of the Aceh government, which is in one part is against the historical base of this, which is it's supposed to be the central government responsibility under the MOU. So as the story goes, even after 2006, after the law on the governing of Aceh is established, there has yet not any TRC. Only 7 years after that, the local Aceh House of Representatives established the local law for the establishment of the Aceh Truth and Reconciliation. It's called the Kanun, the local law, Kanun number 17/2013. So 7 years after the law on the governing of Aceh, or 8 years after the MOU established. If I may put it back, there is not an easy way to establish this TRC. A lot of skeptical point of view, and some of people even say that the TRC is dangerous to the peace process. So this is one of the main narrative that built by the people who are against the TRC. They're saying that by itself, the establishment of the TRC and their work will endanger the peace process. The confidence, the trust that are still building between two parties can be destroyed when the past abuse of human rights, which is committed by both parties, not only by the central government and its force, but also by Free Aceh movement. They said this TRC will endanger this trust and confidence in the building at the time. And the other excuse for the TRC to be not working at the time was, of course, the tsunami itself. They said that at the time we should focus now for the tsunami victims, not dealing with the past yet, that because it can wait. But after 7 years, there is no way that we can wait any longer, because even that is already a delay for the justice that happened, that supposed to be happen and benefit the victims. Now, at the time, clearly that the main force that tried to make the TRC and the transitional justice being made into reality is the NGO. It is the only party and some academics and student movement. We see that if the perpetrators are really reluctant and use all of their power to block the establishment of human rights court and other means of justice, so then we advocating the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as an alternative, because it's the nature of the TRC that not focusing on the perpetrators. We are focusing on the victims and how to rehabilitate them, and doing the justice in other way. So this, we hope at the time, will show the perpetrators that we are not targeting them, that we are not putting them into danger, and hopefully they will understand that not put the effort against the TRC. And for doing this, we talk with a lot of people. Even we are, let's say, crafting or make the law, the draft of the law, and advocating into the House of Representatives. And our CSO friend, AJAR, has a very big responsibility for this, is educating even the lawmaker, giving them opportunity to understand what is the TRC and the transitional justice approach, and building the confidence and and also supporting other friends of us to build the public awareness. Now, after the establishment, what we are now, since 2017, when this TRC already established, I think we already addressed some of the paradigm constraint that or challenge that we can answer with our work. After 5 years, we collect 5,000 some hundred statement from the victims and the witness. And we conduct 3 public hearings. So these 2 efforts show all of the parties Noi, are we continue? I get a message here that I'm disconnected.
Yes, you can continue. Maybe 1 or 2 minutes now.
Okay. I will wrap up. After 5 years of our work, we collect 5,000 and some hundreds of the victims' statement, and we conduct 3 public hearings, which, with our work, without any telling, this exactly can answer all of the skeptical vision that expressed by the enemies. When they say that all the TRC work, all the public hearings, all the statement taking will endanger the peace process, we say to them, look, after 5 years, after 5,000 victims voicing their stories, after 3 public hearings that take place in a very powerful momentum and place, there's no such any disturbance against the peace process. The peace is just doing like that, and that means the TRC has a change in our doing. So this is our way to show to the central government there is still a change for TRC as a way for accountability for the past abuse of human rights. Now, but the problem is still that in 3 of our mandate, first of all is the truth-seeking, and then reparation, and the last one is reconciliation. The reparation is still well, more or less the truth-seeking already conducted, just like we say 5,000 statements and 3 public hearings. But reparation is still ongoing, and when we recommend some early form of the reparation, and the pandemic comes. So the pandemic is used by the government saying that we cannot fulfill your recommendation yet because all of our effort now has to be used to deal with the pandemic. The government time, the government facility, and the government money has to deal with this yet, and we cannot yet deal with all recommendation of the TRC. But behind that, just like I think this is similarity between what Cecilia and our friend in Philippines feel about what happened in Aceh as well. There is a lack of interconnectedness between what we do in Aceh and what the central government feel responsibility. Although our TSO people, friends and colleagues in Jakarta, AJAR included, and a lot of other CSO try their best to convince the central government that they should take care of this work of TRC and pay very close attention to what TRC recommend. So the central government still feel that this is the work of the that has to be responsibility of the Aceh government. They are intendedly forget that this is their responsibility under the Peace Accord 2005. So
yes.
Last point is this.
Okay.
We still also have this feeling similar to what Cecilia already mentioned, the lack of interdependency of these 4 pillars of the TRs of the TJ. At this time, the National Commission on Human Rights are still investigating 3 big cases of mass murder in Aceh. And this is not really in line with our work in the TRC. Even in some, well, the Komnas HAM, the National Commission on Human Rights, is representing the pillar of persecution or justice, right? So this is not really in line, and in some time is against our approach of the TRC. So this is the story from Aceh, and I will end my speech just now. Thank you, Don.
Thank you very much, and it's really clear from us, from what I'm getting from our experience of TRC, public perception, no? And also the continuous of educating public awareness on the truth and reconciliation effort, and that's again the political will can also coming from the central government. And now I think COVID is a scapegoat for everything that is actually happening in our regions, no? So it's sad to say that the pandemic has actually contributed to a delay and actually showing more challenges, no? Okay, so Galuh, are you ready? So we will hear from Galuh, and I think she also in a position to wrap up a little bit about the regional context and also the effectiveness of the regional mechanism, and how is this influence the process in each country and also as the region as a whole. Are you ready, Galuh?
Yes.
Okay, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think some people are going to help put my PowerPoint up while I speak. Thank you. Yes, so I've been asked to reflect a little bit on the regional context. And when you really think about it, one of our main weakness in Asia is that we don't have an effective regional human rights mechanism. When there are crimes that happen that sort of trigger international law, so meaning that the crimes are so serious and so widespread that we have the issue of getting justice and protecting victims and ensuring truth is not only is no longer the business of a domestic jurisdiction, but becomes an issue for the whole of humanity. When you look at examples in Africa, in the Americas, in Europe, where there is a regional human rights mechanism, there is a bit of a dance, right? So when you have impunity or there's no progress at the domestic level, then victims have brought cases to the regional courts or a regional commission in the case of the Americas, for example, or in Europe, and then there can be a decision there that then impacts the domestic level. So it's a process, a dance that has been developed, I think, through a long process with victims being very active, human rights defenders, advocates, etc., the judiciary and countries. And this is what we are lacking in Asia. We have among 10 countries in Asia, the ASEAN, which was established, as you know, back during the Cold War. It very much has a feeling of a military generals club. Since the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration a few years ago, there's the dream of a new ASEAN that is really people-centered and about protecting human rights. And in fact, under Article 5, there is something called the right to remedy, which the ASEAN Human Rights Commission is still just now collecting submissions about what does the right to remedy mean in the ASEAN context, where it has very much been about don't scratch my back and I won't scratch your back. It's always been around protecting sovereignty. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is, impunity is so much the norm. We have some great examples that we've heard today from Aceh and from Mindanao, where we have a little bit of a bite towards truth and justice. But the norm is very much impunity, and there is a return of this strongman politics. You know, from Sri Lanka, Myanmar, we heard from Hanji, it's breaking our heart how the progress of democracy that's happening in Myanmar has completely gone backwards, and the violence and the senseless killings that we're watching in real time at this point. You know, so much of these mass atrocities are unaccounted for. Victims remain discriminated, and perpetrators are back to power. So, you know, and then on top of that, add COVID, which is spreading among the poorer countries, and particularly in countries where there is a lack of an accountable government. So it's very concerning. Next slide. I'm just going to move quickly through because I know we don't have much time, but I wanted to raise that something that's really important also in the Korean context is this long impunity around the military sexual slavery, the Jugunyanfu from World War II, and how that has really, I think, is like a big albatross on our necks. It is something that gets recreated, and after, you know, even though there's been some brave speaking out by victims, and we had the Asian Women's Tribunal in 2000, where women from Korea, from Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Philippines spoke out. There has been very little official accountability. There was an apology, but then it was retracted, and that history is still very much being still pushed and pulled about what is the truth. Particularly from Japan, there is still a big denial around that. And unfortunately, in a place like Timor-Leste, we see that there was military sexual slavery during the Japanese, and then there was military sexual slavery during the Indonesian occupation. So history is repeating itself. Next slide. So I just wanted to also thank our colleagues in Korea for inviting us to the recognition of this May 18 uprising in 1980 in Gwangju, and how we also have our own May movement for democracy. So 18 years later, we had the student demonstrations across many cities around Indonesia. Suharto, our dictator for 33 years, finally fell. And during that time, many people were killed. A lot of the protesters, some of them were burnt inside buildings, and there was cases of rape against ethnic Indonesian Chinese Indonesians in some of the commercial centers. We did have an inquiry and some of the names of the suspects were mentioned in the inquiry and given to the Attorney General, but until today there's been no trials, no official truth commission. I think my colleague Afridal explained how the law for the National Truth Commission was taken out by the Constitutional Court despite the parliamentary promise. Next slide. So we continue to, victims and civil society continue to struggle for justice. And this picture is the picture of Ibu Sumarsi, one of the mothers of one of the students who was killed in 1998. She is still, you know, fighting for justice, fighting for truth every Thursday. She is demonstrating with a bunch of other victims in front of the presidential palace in Jakarta, so that there are trials. That is her push for justice, is that the people who are responsible for the crimes that happened in 1998 are brought to to trial. And unfortunately, some of those people are now in power. They enter politics, set up political parties, join the presidential election, and now they're in powerful positions in the Indonesian government. So we are certainly in that cycle. But I wanted to mention that civil society have not remained silent, and in 2013, 50 organizations across Indonesia came together for creating a coalition for truth and justice, conducted public hearings, and produced that book that I took a picture of. It's called Reclaiming Indonesia. And in it, we talk about the 6 sort of key root causes that still very much is our burden and the legacy of the past, and then we are repeating it over and over again. So the next slide. Also in May, actually, after the fall of Suharto in May 12, 1998, a year later in May 5th, 1999, the UN brokered an agreement between Portugal and Indonesia around a referendum for East Timor. East Timor was a half island on the edge of Indonesia that was illegally invaded by Suharto in 1975, and there was a referendum that the UN brokered in August 30th, 1999, which then led to a ballot where more than the majority of people in East Timor voted to not be part of Indonesia, and therefore in 2002, Timor-Leste became an independent country. Now, one of the, I wanted to mention in particular, one of the remaining agenda as an example of a bilateral civil society effort. One of the remaining agenda was the search for the stolen children. During the Indonesian occupation, thousands of children were taken by Indonesian soldiers and later on by Indonesian religious institutions, educational institutions, brought over to Indonesia with the guise of trying to educate them to become more Indonesian, but really there was many who were ended up completely not taken care of, couldn't get any education, became very poor. And one of the things that AJAR and NGOs from Indonesia and East Timor working together has been trying to search for Timor-Leste stolen children. So those pictures are the reunions. And I just wanted to show this as another example of what we can do when there is there is really, in each of our country, it seems like there's impunity and there's little movement, but then we can always try to find some kind of innovation. And the search for the Timor-Leste stolen children is one of them. Next slide. For us, I already told you about this, that there was the May 5th agreement, and there were processes where there was both a serious crimes, a hybrid court set up by the UN and Timor-Leste government that already brought 94 low-level militias to court, although all of them were convicted for crimes against humanity and war crimes. All of them now have been pardoned. And there was a truth commission called the CAVR, the Commission for Reception, Truth and Reconciliation, that found that more than 100,000 deaths took place due to the conflict, and made a recommendation for Indonesia to apologize and acknowledge these crimes that happened in East Timor. Indonesia has not done that yet, but we did do a bilateral truth commission. I think also another interesting model for Korea, where you're also an island divided into two. East Timor is Timor-Leste, and the western part is part of Indonesia's West Timor. a bilateral truth commission looked at only the crimes of 1999. And one of their recommendations was specifically on setting up a commission for the disappeared, which also included looking for the children who were taken during this time. So next slide. So, so there's thousands more to find, but in the meantime, our coalition, it's called the Working Group for on the Stolen Children. We have found 147 children. They're now all adults because they were taken between 75 to 1999. And we have reunited about 80 of them. So this has been a civil society process, although the Human Rights Commission in Indonesia and the Centro National Chega, that is the post-truth commission institution, have kind of been the umbrella for this activity. So next slide. I just wanted to show some pictures. You know, we continue to raise it. We've been covered by BBC, The Guardian, by ABC in Australia. We have our own film, Nina and the Stolen Children of Timor-Leste. Please look for it on YouTube. It's already got, I think, about 30,000 views. But it is an example of how we can try to find the little fissures, the little cracks in this wall of impunity, so we can try to progress it forward. And lastly, in terms of a big issue for us in this region, next slide, is Myanmar. And I just want to reiterate what I think all of us have said, particularly Hanji, you know, that this is really a final test for ASEAN. You know, if we are not able to deal with this in an effective manner, then, you know, why do we even have this club? Is it a club for, you know, generals and dictators, or can it actually be, can ASEAN really be, make a contribution for human rights and accountability? We know, I mean, we know about the crimes that started into that. I mean, the crimes have been going on for a long time. The conflict in Myanmar, the oppression by the military regime has been going on for a long time. But 2017, we saw, you know, 700,000 refugees run to Bangladesh from Rakhine State, people who call themselves the Rohingya, who believe that they are part of the ethnic groups, part of Myanmar, but there is a whole conflict around that. And then now, since the coup on the 1st of February, we're seeing it, you know, live happening in not only in the ethnic conflict areas, but also right inside Yangon and all of the major cities. There has been some civil society solidarity, obviously, and pushing for ASEAN to do more. But really, this is going to be the test for ASEAN, whether or not we can actually do something and push for accountability. I mean, if we are a club, if ASEAN is a club of governments, can you just suddenly the seat be taken away by somebody else who uses violence and then join the table? I mean, I think that's basically the big question. And, you know, we need to push ASEAN and AJAR to not only discuss the right to remedy as a theory and as sort of a modality, but actually take real action, or else, you know, it will become more and more that we as a region are going to slide more and more into impunity, and all our progress around human rights and democracy is going to be threatened, and plurality is going to be threatened in this region. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Galuh. And also it's frustrating. Also at the same time, trying to keep ourselves hope, no, to continue the effort, no. Okay, we have agreed that we're going to extend a little bit about the time for question and answer. And I'm not sure whether is there any participant in this room would like to ask some questions or contribute something to the forum. Otherwise, there are some notes within our program that someone has, Cecilia, someone have asked you within in the box information that can you update us about this commissioning process? I think you did not cover that, but there is a question about this. So maybe give us some background and what have been done. No? Otherwise, also I will continue reading out the questions. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Actually, it's a very long question, but okay, there are 2 points of the question, 2 sides, 2 parts. The first one is with regard to decommissioning. I did not really cover that, even though it's part of the normalization package. But of course, it is still part of the TJRC, TJR approach. And in fact, in the roadmap of the government, which I showed you at the last substantive slide, I did also, there was also a reference to decommissioning. So what's happening there is that it has been renewed. There is a new batch of soldiers, well, ex-rebels rather, who are being decommissioned, and there is still a discussion whether there will be a next batch or not. Unfortunately, there are discussions concerning unresolved questions concerning the first batch, which are now being turned over, which is now also a legacy of the second batch. The next batches are actually younger, and there's also some kind of debate between the 2 parties with regard to the adoption of DDR as the concept for decommissioning. The point I'm trying to make here is that the parties, and particularly the government, in my view, is approaching decommissioning solely from the point of view of security. And that, for me, is not correct. It's actually not going to really contribute to peace and transitional justice and reconciliation, because security is the sole, or let's say the principal perspective or lens with which decommissioning is being implemented. And we can have a discussion on that. And actually, your second point goes to the aspect of the decision making vis-a-vis battling the BIFF and the Abu Sayyaf, which I pointed out in my conclusion as one of the unresolved questions, because precisely this is all directed from only the viewpoint of security, again, as far as the government is concerned. And secondly, there seems to be no interaction or interdynamics with transitional justice. And in fact, I was just speaking to one of the actors in the Bangsamoro, and one of the things that we were analyzing is how this security approach will actually be an obstacle concerning the implementation of transitional justice and reconciliation, even the roadmap itself, unless there is a very conscious effort to put together, to put together the different elements to have a common outcome. So now there are pockets, decommissioning here, security, military operations on that, and then we've got this TJR roadmap, and I know that they cannot be tackled in isolation of each other. And this is why from the very beginning in my presentation, I really emphasize that it is important to look at it holistically. Of course, you will do the little bits and pieces, but how do they relate to each other? Second, the right to self-determination should always be the underlying principle for the developments in the Bangsamoro. There's also anti-terror law. And again, that's really important because that's a national law. It's now under discussion in the Supreme Court. We don't know when the Supreme Court will actually be making a decision. I think it will still take a few good weeks or even months, but the resolution of the constitutionality of the anti-terror law will actually have a huge repercussion, not just on anti-insurgency, but also on transitional justice in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is another question regarding Myanmar, Haji. The question called like, now we can considering that Myanmar is a failed state, no rule of law, and also institutional cannot control what's going on in the country. What are the space or any opportunity for civil society like you guys or us to play in this failed state of Myanmar?
Yeah,
Did you
actually,
yes?
yes. So actually during the military coup and also military regime, so CSO inside cannot do properly as they did in the past. So most of the CSO who are actively participating in the Syria movement, now they are hiding for evading arrest. But the CSO still operate as space as they have. For instance, APP, Assistant Association for Political Prisoner, one of the anti-Burma members. So they stay monitoring the situation and update the list of arrest, detain, kill daily, and release through their social media. Anti-Burma also monitoring the media and information from some member organization provides. We produce weekly updates of the Syria movement so far since coup in February. But that our people are facing great risk to document in their area as in the past, but now more cautiously work under the coup period. So as you're aware, if the police and soldier confiscate the phone, computer, and found the information in the device, they will be tortured, detained, and get harsh sentences. In my presentation, I already mentioned gender more press on the media and journalists, number of journalists arrested, detained, and sentences. However, mainstream media are still working on the border. At the same time, new media groups PR Insights, as well as the citizen journalists inside to fill the gap for report what's really happening on the ground. And also CSO inside and outside, they collaborate with the UN agency, such as AJAR, Special Rapporteur, and Special Advisory on Myanmar for providing information inside or human rights situation. So for this information, they can compile the reports to present in the Human Rights Council or further accountability process. Yeah, from the war situation, we can get some opportunity that I acknowledge that there are ongoing disagreement, discussion, and negotiation among us, but there is room to improve. Now, CSO inside and outside have an opportunity to discuss with the CRPH and NUG, National Unity Government, which is exile government, for human rights issue, federal system, rule of law, human rights. So CSO can navigate CRPH, NUG, be on the right track. So now, especially drafting the constitution is most important things for us. Because in the past, the 2008 constitution, so there are some clause for black and amnesty for the military general who did wronging in the past,
Mhm.
and also military gets have his position in the parliament. Now the CRPH abolished the 2008 constitution and started drafting their new constitution. So in this opportunity, CSO inside and outside have a room to consult with relevant minister for the drafting constitution, like a federal human rights issue, DJ issue, women issue. So if we face like a war situation, but at the same time, we can get some opportunity to continue to work with the new stakeholder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Auntie, you still have a very good positive, no? It's a crisis, and now we are looking at it as an opportunity. Of course, there are still a lot of assistance that's now in the context of Thailand and Myanmar civil society. I think we also have a lot to do with humanitarian assistance along the Thai-Myanmar border, and also the protection of human rights defenders, that it's really coming into a topic among Thai civil society as well, that what are the best efforts that we can assist our friends from Myanmar, no? Both the media and also human rights activists. Okay, is there any other questions? Otherwise, I'd like to give maybe 1 or 2 minutes last statement from our speakers. Maybe starting from Afridal and Cecilia and Galuh, please. Afridal.
Yeah. There is some of Indonesian people thinking that nowadays our human rights and political conditions are just like returning back into the time of the authoritarian regime. Maybe it is the overly statement, but however, this shows us how important our work is. Just if you don't work, if we don't continue our work and to emphasize the path that already opened and the window of opportunity that already opened, this country can easily return back to the time of the authoritarian. So ensuring our work is still working, and our support to the rule of law will ensure that our dark time will not return. So this will be my closing statement for this session. Thank you.
So continue working and so in solidarity to each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Cecilia, you have any last message
Yes, well,
to us? Yes.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. I know we don't have much time, but I would like to echo my good friends Afridal's call for continuous solidarity. At the same time, I would like to add that it is important that conceptually we really attach our work on transitional justice in reconciliation, not as a technical academic work, but really part and parcel of our political for democracy. That's all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Action oriented, no? Activism. It shall continue. Thank you. Hanji, I think I keep Galuh at the last. Hanji, last request. Hanji?
Yes.
What
Sorry,
do you
I
want us to do? What do you want us to do?
So on behalf of the Myanmar people, I would like to thank the individuals, organizations, diplomats, governments, CSO, who show solidarity and support to Myanmar struggle. I'm thankful to the countries who designates military control business for targeted sanctions.
Mhm.
So recently, Korea MOFA had a meeting with the NUG and promised some points that do not support military equipment to Myanmar military, stop the tie with the military business.
What about Thai? What about Thai military?
You can tell.
Okay.
So Burmese people who live in Korea allow to stay and the situation in Myanmar get back to normal. So here I strongly call for global embargo to immediately halt the import of weapons being used against innocent civilians in Myanmar. Thank you.
I take this opportunity to call on Thai military, no? Stop making a hotline phone call to our dictator in Myanmar, no? If they are really doing things in cooperative among each other. Galuh, you have last few minutes to wrap up and also to close the session.
Yes.
Is that okay? Thank you.
So you said stop making the hotline call intermilitary. So I want to make a hotline call to the young people in Asia. And we see it already with the Milk Tea Alliance, some people connecting through the internet, supporting the very brave protesters in Hong Kong, in Thailand, in Myanmar. Let's take that step even further and get the young people interested in learning about transitional justice and how it can be a tool, one of the tools that we all need to educate ourselves. And as Cecilia said, find action, not academic papers, but do action to ensure that survivors are participate in processes, can speak out, are part of the visioning of a new democracy, a new era for us. Post-COVID, we have to push even more for making these connections. And I just want to also say that we have so many themes that connect us in the region. We have the Cold War and how it impacted on our cultures and ended up in the killings of thousands and millions of people in Asia. So that could be a way that we invigorate our discussion on transitional justice. If we say, okay, let's do an Asia theme on the impact of the Cold War. I mean, we can go back and say colonialism and racism and see how much of those practices of the past we have adopted, and now we continue those practices of racism, practices of overexploitation and pushing off indigenous people, being completely scared of the ghost of communism in places like Indonesia and Thailand and in the Philippines. So these things we can actually really learn from each other and inspire each other, and we can do a joint Asia truth process around that, or on the stolen children or victims of sexual slavery. There's so much for us to inspire and to get engaged with one another, because I think when we do that, then we are, sometimes we feel so depressed and so burdened by the lack of progress in our context. But when we work at a regional level, we can see more clearly what are the patterns and some of the root causes that could be global, and we can inspire and find a way forward and bring the young people to be our partners and our teachers in this process that's definitely intergenerational and will take a very long time still. That's from me.
Thank you very much. And I think the forum come to an end, and thank you all the speakers and also the co-organizer, the AJAR, Tijan, and also the May 18 Foundation. To be continued, action-oriented and in solidarity with all the stories. And I think we have to gratitude the victims of violence in the past, and also the support to all the human rights defenders that's now facing, some of them are facing a real right threatening Well, thank you. And I think I close the session, or otherwise the other moderator can do so.
Thank you, Noi. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Afridal.
Bye.
Hanji.
Thank you,
Take care.
Noi. Cecilia.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Rich.
Good luck, Hanji.
Thank you.